Finishing up. It's had about 8 inches total water put on it so far, and about 6 inches of that was pumped. And we'll push this all the way to frost and make hay out of it.
If you've got questions, either way, I asked Billy to be careful because I was a little happy of the rye, like in your mustards and your finer species, your small species into it. And we're starting off with one deal that you actually missed it up because it's right, it works really well. And on this one here, though, you lightly disc it back in there, so you don't go quite as intensely on the Billy in order to try to shut that rye down long enough to be able to establish. So here, John Halls, we didn't have that much of a lithopathy effect in here. You can see the rye coming, and it didn't tend to suppress. But now one thing that we did do, the rye went to maturity, or not maturity, but it went into reproductive growth, maybe to the flower stage before it was hay. And it's been my experience, and I think it's kind of proven it out here, that if you let that rye grow out into the flower stage, you won't have the allelopathic problems, especially if you're touching tillage or
variety of things. It works a little bit better, in my opinion, because it has a smaller stalk compared to the Dugan or the Sword Ant 79, which has a bigger stalk. And from my experience, the cattle like this a little bit better. It's a little bit more palatable. This year we seeded in it a Dawn millet. Patrick was able to find it with some research on it that it's a non-host for nematodes. This field will go back into potatoes probably next year if everything works right. And so that's one of the criteria that I have, is trying to sort through things so that we don't plant a crop that's a host to what we're trying to get rid of. And so that's kind of where we're trying to get some of the studying, and Patrick spends a lot of time at night researching. So we did that. I went ahead and sprayed the weeds in this because we can with the millet and the sorghum. We can spray the weeds with just regular 2,4-D light rate, some Banville. And then I had the idea that it would be smart maybe to come back in, and we interseeded it after the fact then with some Adios radish and a little bit more of the sorghum just to see what it'll do. I don't think it was quite the right idea, in the sense that you can find the radishes out there now, but they're really small and they're getting shaded out. They'll probably come on once this freezes down. They'll grow a little bit more, but the radish, in my opinion, from what I've seen, adds a little bit of protein to this mix, and we don't have the concentration high enough to really dominate it, but it'll bring the protein up maybe 2 or 3 points, or maybe a little bit more if the situation's just right. I don't think we can afford to put the amount of radishes in here that you would want to get that protein content up there. But we've grazed cows on this kind of a mix. Well, without the millet, we don't know much about the millet, but the sorghum and the radish, we've grazed cattle on it before, mother cows or our calves, and they do real well. We don't supplement them, and they gain. They do, they'll eat it. You don't have to train them to eat it. They go right through that sorghum. So
how are you grazing it?
What we've done here, and we'll do it again this year, is we windrow it. We just windrow it, and then we put a perimeter electric fence around the whole field, and then came up with a system to put an electric fence down the sprinkler. And then I just move the sprinkler every day a little bit and expose a little bit to it. We're going to try and modify that a little bit if we can come up with a bright idea, because the only downside to that is we overgraze the first part because we don't back fence it. And I think that's something we need to look into, is a reasonably labor effective way of back fencing it, because the problem is when it freezes, it's pretty hard to put an electric fence post in the ground. So we'd have to figure that out and have that done ahead of frost.
So hard to figure out what will happen there. 13 pounds of sorghum. That was a super sugar sorghum. We're not looking at nematode control here, so we didn't go Sword Ant 79. We went with the super sugar sorghum, which is, and then we're looking at 4 pounds of pearl millet. Then just for kicks, we throw in 3 pounds of corn and 5 pounds of sunflower. I don't see a lot of the corn, although it's here. I do notice the sunflowers, and you do too, because it seems like it probably floated to the top and was just planted in the outside edge. But as you go through there, there's quite a bit of sunflowers that's going to be in there. Come back in a week or two, and you'll see a nice looking sunflower field. 3 pounds of sweet clover. That 4 pounds of turnip is actually 3 pounds of radish and 1 pound of turnip.
What species of turnip?
Yes.
The Winfred hybrid
Hybrid turnip.
and a Defender radish was the radish.
Was there any purple stuff in there?
Just those two, Defender radish and the Winfred hybrid.
Okay.
And
So
then the peas. I don't know if you mentioned the peas.
I haven't. Then there's 21 pounds of spring peas. So Bob Dugan is not here. He's the landowner and the guy that did this. I'll try to answer any questions you've got, or Ken can, as we go through.
What was the cost per acre?
The cost per acre was probably about $75.
Okay. I can get it for you just a second.
You're going to check my math? I did it just in my head. Now
I
you
got the
check
total.
my calculator. Go
I
ahead.
got it divided out. You don't get it.
It's fully irrigated, so we don't know for sure. We do have records on it. The first 3 or 4 irrigations, he actually did he let the previous landowner actually coach him on how to irrigate, so they just kept it going back and forth. Both directions with about 4 tenths. And then, but then we started working with him on water management, and I think he's tonnage is going to be about a ton less than he wants and about a ton more than he can handle. I'm guessing we got 4 tons out here right now. And if we let it grow another week or two, he's trying to decide whether he can get it to go through a windrow or is he going to have to mow it and rake it. So or leave it standing and do a good job on his fences. I agree, John. I think that would be nice. The problem with leaving it standing, this is for grazing. This is sorghum. There's some pearl millet here too, but on that sorghum, if you leave it standing, you're going to have to wait until it's dead killed before you go back in there and bring to it right away when you bring these cows back in. Unless there's too much regrowth. If we windrow it a little too early, and then he gets 12 inches or 18 inches of regrowth of the sorghum, then it's lethal. And so then you would have to wait until that grows down and dry. The sorghum will produce prussic acid poisoning, and this kind of windrow